Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dynamic Character Productions' continued coverage of our 8th season, Rites of Passage All-Stars. I am joined by two absolutely amazing guests this week, both alumni from our second long game, Monte Carlo. I have Margaret Kelly.
Hi.
And I have featured production member this week, McKenna Inglis.
Yeah, in the same spot.
In the exact same spot. Exactly how we want it. We need that consistency.
The bad bitch alliance that never was.
Right.
Exactly. So perfect. So wonderful to have both of you here this week. I'm so excited to talk about two really monumental episodes in this season. We saw leading up to this, we had the merge got a little crazy. It got a little wild. And everyone's question coming into this week is, okay, what happens now? Does Fumo correct themselves, focus on these like original Ignis people, get them out, or do they keep cannibalizing themselves? And well, we have our answer now. Margaret, what are your thoughts on the season so far?
I will say that even though when I did a long game, it was a true long game. It wasn't long game for the pre-merge and then post-merge, it's all one mini. But it felt chaotic enough once it was post-merge that like I can see what they're thinking and feeling, and I know it's on turbo. It was on turbo for them, I'm sure, the day of, because of how intense that timeline is. But like it still felt intense even when I had like 6 days to deal with things, because if anyone watched Monte Carlo, you know it did not go the way that was ideal for me. So I get it. The people who have gone out, I'm just like, I feel you.
Yeah, it's never easy. And like we can sit here as people who have played long games, people who have played minis, like every game is unique the way it's played, but the one thing that isn't unique is you're going 100 miles per hour at every single moment. Like even on rest days, you're still going. So for everyone to have kind of gotten into this lull, and I say lull, knowing that they're still working really hard of a long game and thrusting them into the mini, it got wild. And there are a lot of conversations. We're seeing how you could even see, just watching the episodes, how fast people are talking to each other now. You know, no one's taking their time. Everyone's like, okay, tell me an answer right now. We need to know this right now. We see people talking about, okay, who's done their confessional so we know who may or may not get pulled.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these players came to play because they know the format. They know exactly what's happening in this mini format. They know what to look out for, and they know who to look out for. We see people talking about, okay, I see people in this room, so I need to go over there and break up any conversation they have that might be going against us. I see... It's crazy. It's wild how fast-paced this gets. And I mean, we made it a little wilder this season. We'll get to that in a little bit, but there's some ways that we made it so that we had to have a lot more conversation going on in these couple of rounds. But yeah, what were you gonna say, Margaret?
I was just gonna say that, like, I mean, we'll get more into it, but it was interesting both because, like, knowing when I'm watching mini rounds that I'm like, oh, they haven't, like, these are not people who met this morning and now they're like doing their best. Like, there's very established bonds, and now it's turbo mode. So that is really interesting to see. I just also have trauma that the one mini round I ever played, I lost my closest ally. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, speaking of long tenured relationships, we see the Exile Boys reconnecting at the beginning of this week. We had Lilly talk about it on last week's Sunday show. We had Lilly talk about it last week, where, no one's talking about these Exile Boys. There's 4 of them. They had like at least 26 days to get to know each other, whereas the Trinity Falls people had like a couple of hours to work with each other. And we finally have it. We actually have confirmation from Austin and Andrew in a room together saying, hey, we're getting to a point where like we can make Exile Island work here. All 4 of us are still here. No one's pegging us as a group. We need to get together. McKenna, you're booing this, but what are you feeling? Like, give me some more.
I just think, like, for me personally, when we were working, like, we're talking about casting, and that was just a conversation as who's going to get together with their original season members, and, like, will that be boring? And I just remember kind of watching this form and watching them fall into conversation with each other, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me that it's actually happening. But it ended up not being, I boo it, but it ended up not being as bad as I thought it could be. Because no one's clocking them. Everyone's clocking Trinity Falls, everyone's clocking Austin, Simmons, Maddie as a trio. They got Danny and Maddie right away. Like, but no one seems to remember that these 4 guys played on Exile together, or they don't care. They don't see them as a threat or see them banding together. So I think it was like something I didn't want to happen at the beginning of the season, but as it's kind of forming, it's been fun. It was fun to watch.
One thing I really noticed with this grouping too is like we're pretty far in the game for these boys to finally like come completely together, right? We saw like whispers of it on the original AGS where Andrew, Austin, and Simmons were like, okay, we kind of have this thing with Mike, the failed fraternity and everything, bringing in Karen for that 5th vote for the Danny vote. But for the most part, like they haven't been working towards this moment. Like this isn't something that they were like, okay, we just got to get to the point where all of us Exile boys could just take over the game. They've kind of gifted this moment. Margaret, is it like a complete oversight by everyone else in this season to even let these 4 boys get to a point where, I mean, by the end of the 2nd episode, there are 7 people left in this game. They legitimately have a majority.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was such a big deal when after I was on jury for Monte Carlo, and I found out from Mike, like, you know, because I was not in the game to find out, you know, in real time the way that people still in the game were, to find out that him and Kylie had a pre-existing relationship from a different game, and then they like united at the merge to under everyone's like eyes. So they have the excuse of no one knew, like no one watched enough orgs in our game to like know that they had that existing relationship. Even though I was not familiar with Exile like all the way through, like I'm like, you can't let 4 people from that season get together. Like I'm not a good Survivor player, but like I know you can't do that. So
well, I don't know what you're talking about not being a good Survivor player, but what were you saying, McKenna?
I was gonna say, I wonder if the Austin, Simmons, Maddie trio is like, we hear Ashley talk about that a lot, and I can't remember, well, obviously the first episode. We hear her talk about that a lot, and you know, she's saying, I want Zucker, but we have to look at this 3. We have to look at this 3. And maybe the conversation is away from those 4 because the conversation was like, oh, well, we're getting rid of Zucker. And, you know, we're starting to break that up. And then there's this other kind of core 3. I don't know. But I just think if anyone was going to clock it, it would have been Ashley because she was already starting to talk about Maddie, Austin, and Simmons as a trio.
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about that for a moment, because up until this episode, like there was talk about that 3 at the beginning of the merge, like when that Lex boot and the original target was on Maddie with the backup on Austin. Simmons was kind of excluded because Karen really wanted to work with him moving forward. And since then, like there hasn't been a lot of talk about that 3 being a 3. Like as soon as the chaos erupted, they kind of were able to step back, hide in the background a little bit, let things happen, and then like, you know, decide where they're going. And I think like that's really what we see this week is they have positioned themselves to a point where there are two sides who just can't seem to come together enough to target them, and they get to take control of these votes and decide who's going home. And Ashley's the first person we have seen really pegging that three. It's like, no, that three is tight. They are working closely together. We need to work against them because we're letting them slide by. And a block of three, and we just saw it in 44, right? A block of three can be really powerful if given, like, if placed into this type of position where people are like, oh, well, we can always wait till next time. Eventually, next time comes, and there aren't four of you to vote against them anymore. So, Margaret, I mean, you essentially had something like that happen in Monte Carlo, right? Where you had a minority group kind of sit back and see the majority go against itself, and then kind of like work their way to the end. So, like, what's that like? What prevents you from seeing that when you're in game?
I think when it's a non-all-star situation, it's really, that is where I think I have a lot, like when I was getting caught up on Survivor seasons, once I was like a crazy person who played the game themselves, I realized that it really is, like you're not the TV producer when you're playing the game. You're just in it. And it's really easy. Like, that's why they always say, oh, perception is everything. It really is everything when you're like in your Survivor silo. But that said, okay, like when you're talking about, oh, you're letting people like skate by, we'll vote them out next time. That is exactly what's going on with Michael Zucker right now. And I'm like, I don't know what he's doing to like, get away with that. But, I was on the season that Jonathan ended up winning. So I'm like, either Zucker's getting voted out next episode or he's winning. I'm just saying.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, McKenna, as the kind of flip side of that, how do you navigate that as someone in a minority?
I think I was going to say, I feel for these three, and it's kind of fun to watch because I felt like that's in my head. Jonathan, Victoria, and I were a three, coming into the merge, but the perception was that it was me, Mike, and Victoria. And so I knew I had more numbers. I knew I was better insulated than I was perceived to be. And it just helped that, the other side had a little more time to cannibalize, and it helped, I didn't know about Mike's relationship with Kylie, but then that, in turn insulated me for a few rounds. And truly, I think we had the majority going in, but it wasn't perceived that way. And I do think people were saying, oh, well, we can get him next time. We can get him next time. We even said that about Mike Rick when we turned on him. Like, we can get him next time. And he kept winning immunities. And he has to lose so we can finally get him.
Just speaking to that, I know that once Andrew was voted off, was the first merge boot on our season, that's when I knew it was over for me, and it was over for a Root Ken winner overall. So I fully agree with McKenna. She was part of the winning strategy. I wish it was her, but Jonathan's great too. So,
and we see what the advantage of that three has here is that Andrew, it is that X-File Boys connection, right? Like, in the end, it is the X-File Boys, and it is also that original tribe connection with Andrew that really puts them into that position, right? Where, like you were saying, McKenna, where you had the perceived three with Mike, Rick, and then your actual three with Jonathan. Here we have this perceived three, which is an actual three in this situation, but they have a fourth that no one's pegging. And I talked about it last week, how I thought Andrew played this merge so magnificently. I loved seeing what I saw from him in the last two episodes last week. He continues playing incredibly well. In these two episodes, he's playing in a position where everyone believes him. And he's just feeding information. And it again is what allows the Exile Boys to reconnect, because despite the fact that they've been on the opposite side of Zucker, like they've gotten Zucker to the point where he's so isolated, he has to go to them in order to survive in the game.
Yeah. I'm happy to see Zucker as he's on my fantasy team. I'm happy to see him live another day. But yeah, he's definitely, I think, I can't remember who said it, but someone says it like, hey, you're kind of on the outs, man. Like, you got to do something. And I think he recognizes that, but he also knows in his back pocket, like, they could be bullshitting me this whole time about Exile Boys and like Exile Connection. But I think part of it is true, and he knows that. And he's kind of riding that wave, whether he wanted to or not.
Yeah, it's just really interesting that we as the audience know that he has an idol, and he has, his name has been coming up, but he hasn't played it yet. So he has had reason to feel confident. So he's doing something right.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that's so impressive about Zucker. And I mean, maybe he just learned from our Exile game where I got impatient with the idol and it kind of cost us. His patience with this idol is astounding, because, I mean, as someone who's held an idol, those things make you very paranoid. And not just in like the, oh my God, I don't want to get voted out with it, but in the, when can I play this? Because you kind of start thinking everyone's always like picked up on the fact that you have an idol and you need to play it, right? And especially Zucker, who got this idol in such an open way. He should be assuming every single person here knows he has an idol. But as far as we've seen, no one has pegged that. But he is playing. The man is playing with fire, because he gets 3 votes in both of these tribal councils. He is the backup vote in each of them. His patience is immaculate, and it's really putting him in a very solid position here. Let's move on to this first challenge in this episode. It's a challenge that we've kind of taken from the exact specifics of it from Monte Carlo, what we did, where it's a 3-stage challenge, and the winner of each stage gets to bring someone from that previous stage along with them. And so we start with the knot tying and the grappling hook. So for this, for anyone who doesn't know, because in our minis, we ask people to get their own supplies, bring them together. But for our long games, we send supplies out to everyone. And they get their box with all their things in it. We tell them not to open it until we start. And one of the things they had was this grappling hook that McKenna tied a bunch, McKenna Feeney, host McKenna, tied a bunch of knots on. And made this grappling hook for them to do this part of the challenge where they get these dice. And it was one of those things that we haven't yet had an opportunity to really emulate from Survivor, is knot untying. And this was the perfect opportunity for us to do that. So we see this portion happen. We see Karen win it. Moving on to the second section, taking Austin Moorhead with her. And he's important in all of this, as it turns out. And we get to the second section where they have to roll dice, and they're blindfolded, and they feel out the numbers on the dice, like the divots on the dice, and lay them out sequentially 1 through 6. Now, out of all the strange coincidences we could possibly have, the reason we developed this challenge was because of Ashley in Ariki Islands. Because we had a similar one challenge to this where we rolled the dice and it was a caller telling people when they were rolling it, but Ashley was feeling out the divots in the dice so that she didn't have to wait for the caller to say what was going on. And Meredith did the same thing in Ariki, but because of that, we're like, okay, let's adopt this challenge. And then it happens to be the challenge that happens in Ashley's boot episode of all things. But we see Maddie fly through this portion of the challenge. Like she finished it so quickly, and then Austin Garsow also finishes it. Maddie also chooses Austin Moorhead to come with her to the final stage,
who did not do well at the dice challenge. He fixed several correct dice and made them wrong, And I know because I think I was pinning him like while we were recording.
Mhm.
And I just kept taking pictures of the screen because it was so like unbelievably funny. And he and I have discussed this afterwards. I'm like, what were you thinking? And it just goes to show like when you're in the heat of a challenge, you're not thinking.
Agree.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those hard things. Now, I have to admit to a production boo-boo here. And I'm the one who gets the flack here. Because this is my boo-boo. When we planned this challenge, we came up with this idea of this cup pyramid using the balloon to transfer the cups. Well, I forgot that my dear sister has a latex allergy. And we realized this right before, because I had just sent all the supplies to her. And she opens the box and she's like, I am allergic to balloons. I'm like, that's not good. But my thought process was, well, you know what? Maybe she'll just be gone by then. We don't have to worry about it. Or maybe she won't get far enough into this challenge. We won't have to worry about it. Well, of course, she's the one who punches her ticket to this part of the challenge first. So I'm McKenna Feeney and I are communicating with my brother-in-law, Marshall, Maddie's husband, and trying to figure out a way to make it so that Maddie could participate in this challenge. We come up with a conclusion because like you can't really get non-latex balloons. You get mylar balloons, but they don't have the same stretch as a latex balloon, so it's not going to work for this challenge. We came to the conclusion that we could find a mouthpiece that made it so Maddie had to use that instead of like putting the balloon directly in her mouth to blow up the balloon, expand it, place the cup, and continue. It comes with its own challenges because you don't get that opportunity to like close your lips and bite down on the balloon to keep it blown up. And eventually, this is like right before this challenge starts, Marshall rushes to the hardware store. He gets 2 different types of pipe fittings. And eventually so if you look at the challenge, Maddie's actually using a brass pipe in order to be able to hold this balloon in her mouth. So a future note, definitely asking about allergies from now on, so we don't run into that problem again.
I mean,
But alas, oh, sorry, what was that, Margaret?
Saying I would not have wanted to bite on a bronze fitting, even if immunity is on the line either.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of those things. Just like I can't believe I forgot this of all people because I have no excuses not to know this. The rest of production didn't know this, but I should have known this, and it's okay. It's covered. It's covered. We got it covered, and instead, what we get is an incredible last section of this challenge that is so close. It looks like Garsow's about to do it, and he just doesn't pull that balloon out enough, and it knocks his entire thing down. He has to start from 1 cup again. Maddie then is right there and does the exact same thing, and it goes back and forth for a while. McKenna, just as a production member watching this, tell us what was going on through your mind.
It was so exciting. Like, it was one of the more exciting challenges because you first think it's like a runaway with Austin Garsow and you're like, oh, challenge beast. And then all of a sudden it gets knocked over and we're like, okay, it's anybody's game again. And then we see Maddie do the exact same thing. And we're like, oh my gosh, okay, Austin Garsow's back again. Oh, it knocks it over again. And like, I just remember being locked in. And, we eventually see Austin Moorhead come through with the win, and he was nowhere near close the whole time, but he was just kept building as these two were knocking their pyramids over. And it was just so fun to watch someone who was picked twice win the whole thing. Yeah, it was like it was definitely one of the more exciting, thrilling challenges to watch live.
So Margaret, what's the mentality when like you're picking someone to come along with these? Because we see here it punishes Maddie here. It punished Karen the round before, right? What what type of thought process goes into who you take, because there are so many different variables you have to consider.
Exactly. And I was never in this position on the game that I played, but I do remember that that Victoria, she might have won her way to the second round, but like she definitely was carried into the third round. So what I think is the balancing act is you don't want to be too obvious, even if everyone already knows who your allies are. Don't bring like who everyone might perceive as a strong ally along, but maybe don't bring along the person who you think you can beat. Just bring along someone who is the middle ground. And because I know that Austin Moorhead is a great player, but I've never heard that the reason he's a great player is because he's this challenge beast. So I do get the mentality of like, okay, Austin's like not gonna like kill these challenges, right? But just when you think that is when they surprise you. So yeah. And also shout out to Austin for having asthmatic lungs and winning a balloon based challenge.
Yeah, we've got Maddie and Austin.
Yeah, like there's no reason either of these two should have been in this. Of course, we're saying they were like, oh my god, of course these two are the ones who are here. After this challenge, there are so many messages coming from production to both of those two, just checking up on them for health reasons. Like, you're still alive, right? We're okay. We didn't kill you.
I'm sure Ian was like, I do not want to tell mom and dad that you're dead, Austin. Please don't be dead.
And here's a funny tidbit. Maybe you didn't notice, but I if you watch the challenge and you watch the point where Maddie says she'll take Austin Moorhead with her, Simmons' face is priceless. It just drops into this frown of like, are you kidding me? You're not taking me? I think taking Austin here was absolutely the correct choice for Maddie. It's one of her closest allies. And still someone she thinks should be. Like we said, Austin's asthmatic. He has there is no chance he should win this. He pulls it off. It's fine, because Austin Garsow doesn't. And it doesn't matter, it comes to the vote anyways. But it's just like, I do appreciate the strategy Maddie has here. It's just so funny. It bites her in the ass in a way that she couldn't possibly have predicted.
And I think, too, we see it later in a confessional from Karen when she says that she took Austin initially because she wanted to kind of prove that, she's with him and wanted to be in his good graces. And I don't think Karen needs to win any more challenges, but like didn't need to win that challenge necessarily. I think this was best case scenario for her. She brings Austin second round. He gets brought third round and wins. Like, he has no chance of winning if Karen doesn't bring him at first. So I think Karen's the big winner here.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It puts her in a good position where it's like, okay, this person who won immunity, who really, when you win individual immunity, it puts you into a power position because you have the ability to be a little more forceful with the way you approach a vote, because it can't fall back on you immediately. And as we've seen so many times in DCP history, just getting through a vote is so important sometimes. And because you get to the next round and everything from the previous round can be forgotten. So Austin being able to push a name here, super important. And for Karen being like the reason Austin could even win immunity, it makes it very unlikely it's her name that's getting pushed from that person.
Yeah. And as she said herself, it really helped that she did not end up winning the challenge because, yeah, maybe Austin won because he got brought, but if he was like there in that round with Karen, maybe this round would have ended up differently. So
yeah,
it didn't. And I think it was clear Karen could appreciate that she was not a challenge beast this particular round.
Well, so in the end, we have Austin Moorhead winning, and we have Garsow putting up a really good, solid performance again. So we're now at a point where people are kind of looking at challenge performances. We're like 3 votes into the merge here. When it comes to winning immunities versus like consistently doing well in immunities, like how does that factor into a vote, Margaret?
It is something you have to consider, because no one thought, for example, no one thought Rick was a challenge threat because he gave us no reason to think that. But then he could like find it within himself to like,
Mm-hmm.
in one challenge, literally have the core strength to pull it out. So it's like you really should not it was either this round or the next round where Michael Zucker said, like, not every challenge is your challenge, but there's a challenge for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, and like, so it's, and to bring it back to my season, Will was someone who, even if he didn't win immunity, I think everyone, regardless of if they were working with him or not, you had your eye on how well he was doing. And you don't want to take the chance that maybe he does win right when you want to vote him out.
Yeah, McKenna, we're seeing that with a couple of people in this season now too, right? With Garsow, he doesn't win this challenge, but he's playing for it again. He's playing for it at the end of it again. We see in the next episode he does win immunity again. We see Kylie as someone who is consistently doing well in these challenges. Now, in a mini, like you can't really practice for challenges in a mini. Like you can assume what they're going to be. You can assume like there's probably some like party game stuff, bouncing ping pong balls into cups, flip cup, these type of things. But they're fairly random things. It's not like, okay, I'm solidly good at this. This is something I'm very, very good at. Does challenge performance weigh as much in an org as it does in, say, Real Survivor when you're on an island and competing in challenges?
I think it really depends. Like this group of people they've seen if they did their homework, they've seen how people compete and how they do in challenges and in our games, and so you have to assume that the challengers are going to be of the same vein.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of talk right away of both Karen and Simmons being challenge beasts, and we haven't seen that come to bite them yet. But I think it's important, but I don't think it's as important as people make it out to be, because some of it is fluke stuff. Some of it is just, you have an on day, you have an off day. But I do think it does play into the perception, your threat level, and but maybe not necessarily the vote itself. Whereas Real Survivor, I think there's a lot more on the line, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot more, you physically train for that, and it's a lot more individualized of who can do that with their body, who can do that with their mind, and versus like, who can flip some cups and bounce some balls.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into this vote, because this is a really emotional vote, obviously. It's coming down to it. There's a lot of people talking about Ashley, and Ashley is kind of like the last remaining remnants of that Lex alliance that we saw coming into the merge. Yes, Zucker's there too, but he's kind of found himself in this weird no man's land at this point, but he is the other name people are putting out there. And we see Ashley talking about the original Ignis 3 and how, we have to start targeting them, but targeting Zucker here because of his relationship to Simmons weakens that group, and it makes it easier to take them out later on. And I think the biggest thing we have here is we have Kylie pushing Ashley's name as in an attempt to bring Karen closer to her, because she knows that Karen can never be her closest ally if Ashley's still in the game. And we have Karen really struggling with this vote because she knows Ashley incredibly well. They host their own orgs together. Ashley was at Karen's wedding. They are outside of game friends. These are people who spend time with each other outside of games. And Karen's really struggling with this vote, but knows that, at the same time, it's like she still has to do what's best for her own game. McKenna, you played in an org with friends. What's it like when you have like out of game relationships with people and you have to turn on them?
I'm speaking for me. I don't know if I'm speaking for you, John, but it was hard for me. And there were several conversations that I had, especially when it got closer to the end, of like, I like still want to be your friend, and I don't care as much about the game as I care about our friendship. And it is hard. I think like I would never hold something against somebody that happens in a game, but when you're in the heat of a mini, especially, emotions run high. So I get it. Like I definitely understand how hard it can be, and it's just you never want to write a real outside of the game friend's name down. But sometimes you have to. Or in this case, sometimes you don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of something that we at DCP really pride ourselves on, is like the community we have, right? And these friendships that bond out of these games and stuff. And yes, Ashley and Karen kind of extend past that, but Margaret, you were in your game, you developed close relationships with Andrew and Parker, and you get blindsided with their departures. What's that like, being like the close friend who's left out of the vote?
I would say that if I was going into not even this, just if I was going into an all-stars round or even just a different org, I learned my lesson, like, don't play only with your heart. I believe in playing with your heart, but like I went through a lot more pain, I think, than other people did. If it was their second or third go round where they know, all right, maybe I need to cut a friend. If that's what I need to do, I need to do it. And I would never want to have to do it, but I am a little more aware of that possibility than I was when I played. And it really hurts to not even have the heads up really that they're going. Everyone kind of, I think because I had the heart on my sleeve reputation when I played. So no one told me what was going on because they knew there would be blowback.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because as much as we like to talk about Survivor as a social strategy game, it's impossible for it to be that without it being an emotional game as well. And we've really seen that so far this season. We saw with Lex and Garsow, Garsow with the Lydia boot, Lex and Garsow with the Brittley boot, which I think is one of like the biggest examples of this happening over a short period of time. So in today's secret scene, we do have Karen showing this struggle of having to be there as like a close friend needs to be voted out of the game.
Yeah, and yeah, I did appreciate that Karen was able to get away with saying, I am not writing Ashley's name down. And she didn't, and even if like other players like didn't have, they were like, okay, not agreeing with my strategy, but I saw like no one was really pushing back against her.
Yeah, and this scene is going to show that even better.
Shelter. Karen, what are you thinking? Because I know that you're. If there's another name, I'm interested, but.
I mean, if the vote, I'll just be honest with you. If the vote is going to go Ashley, I might just throw a random vote because at this point for like my game, I'm uncomfortable with that. But at the same time, I understand everybody else has their own games, and you guys aren't playing my game. So like, if that's what you guys need to do or want to do, just like at final 9, I'm uncomfortable with that. personally. So, like, I could lie to your faces right now and say, yeah, I'm gonna vote Ashley, but that's honestly, I don't think I can do that right now. I'm not saying I'm never gonna cut her,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So as we can see there, and like as you were saying, Margaret, Karen's given this opportunity here where like she doesn't have to vote out her friend, and she has this opportunity because it's so early that her friend's being targeted. She does not put that name out, and because she's being honest about it, we even see that it might actually end up being positive for her in episode 10 when there's talk about who should go home, and Simmons says, well, it's either Kylie or Karen. We hear Austin there say, with what Karen had to go through last round, like, we shouldn't do that this round. We should build up trust with her again.
Oh yeah, no, had someone like Simmons's name come up the round that Ashley was voted out, like, you know, I could, and it would, Simmons would be like, would probably be going crazy in the following round and being like, well, we got to get Karen out, where, you know, because she flat out, you know, she did flat out say, I might throw a random name out. And, but so it's good that she was like, I heard Zucker, I'll write him, as opposed to a truly random name that maybe wouldn't have been so random. I say this as someone who like wrote down Will at the first two available opportunities. And I would go to Passmark and be like, don't do it.
Well, McKenna, there is one other interesting thing that we imposed in this episode, and it's the first time we've ever done it. We put room limits on our breakout rooms. You want to just walk us through the thought process there and what we got out of it?
Yeah, so initially we were kind of seeing these big groups forming, and I'll say it worked well for the merge boot just because we got that fiery Kylie Lex whole group moment. But we were starting to kind of see everyone sitting there twiddling their thumbs, not really saying anything, and then we would have one person in confessional and then maybe one person awkwardly say like, I'm gonna go to the well. And I feel like some of the mentality was like, oh, that person's at the well. No one wanted to do that because then everyone's going to be talking about that person that's at the well. So we put this room limit of no more than 3 people in a breakout room at a time. It was interesting because people were popping in and out to kind of boot other people. It kind of became a strategic thing as well, where people were blocking rooms because they say, oh, we have to keep 3 in here, or people were bumping in and out to kind of break rooms up, and it just helped move the pace of the conversation and kind of scrambled the groups a little better. I can see how it frustrated people in real time. Like, it was definitely, they were pissed, but I think it spiced up the conversation and spiced up the strategy.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time we've considered putting a room limit on. We actually kind of almost talk about it every single mini, because we always get to that point where it's like, are they talking? Like, are they talking enough? And we haven't actually gotten to a point where it was necessary. And we thought at this point, because like we didn't know what was going on, we had to see conversations. We didn't want just 5 people popping in a room together and just deciding what was going on. We wanted to make them have to work for it a little more, which is why the room limit set at 3. At 3, you always, like, you never have enough to completely switch the vote without talking to other people as well. And we see the way it's being navigated. We see the way that, like, Andrew's like, okay, we have to go talk to Simmons about this. We have to go talk to Zucker about this. We have to, and just like confirming everything through both of these episodes. Once we hit this limit, it honestly made the game more dynamic, to use a word that we use here a lot. And
it was fun. I thought it was a fun addition. Like, it was, there was a lot more, and I hate to say like room for error in a way that we want to set people up for error, but it made people stop and think a second, like, who is in this room with me? Like, are these truly two people I want to be telling this to? As someone who was like sitting in the same room all day watching these people talk, it was like someone would get pulled and they'd be like, did you really mean that?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, a lot of confirmation, like as they're
Yes.
getting pulled for confessionals. Because as the way we do confessionals, we have our two people doing confessionals off on the side. Those people have no idea what's happening in the scramble rooms whatsoever. And they're just like texting Carrie, being like, okay, send me this person now. That's why we get these inopportune moments when, you know, all of a sudden someone's gone. It's because the people in confessional don't know what's happening. Margaret, you were going to say something?
I was just gonna say, this is my platform to air my grievance with the mini round that I played. And it's not just because my dearest ally was booted that round in that game. It was because also I was a winner of that round, and should I have had some idea that had I not won, I would have been booted that round? Yes, but I did not. I was very naive. But I got pulled, I'm pretty sure the first confessional. So I did not have the opportunity to be in a room to, at least, maybe have the chance, would I have said Will or Mike's name that round? Yeah, I would have, but I was pulled. So then there was an opportunity for, someone not on my side to say an ally of mine's name. And so that's where I wish that maybe there would have been that 3 max until everyone does their confessional structure, because it would have been a benefit to me.
Well, Margaret, as the person who does confessionals, I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. And yeah, I know maybe people will take this into consideration the next time they play one of our minis. I always call the confessional the person who won immunity first for a confessional, because they are the safest. It is safest to pull them from a scramble room because their name literally cannot be discussed. So it's safest to pull them out.
Okay, that makes sense, I guess.
There's logic behind it. I promise there's logic behind the madness that happens in our minis. And they also have immunity, so they have because it can't blow back on them, they can push a little harder when they get back there after they find out what's going on and whether they like it or not. There is a little bit of thought process that goes into how we pick people. And then other than that, it's try to make sure it's not the exact same order every single round.
Yep. And actually, to bring it back to this particular round, it was really clear to me that Garsow realized he was in the actually no, this is the next episode, but he realizes even as a winner he's in the minority.
Yeah.
And that was what was so painful about mine.
Absolutely.
Is that I realized very quickly once I came out of confessional that I was not in the majority. Whatever was about to happen, and no one was even going to tell me a name for a while. Of course, in the context of my game, it was because everyone knew that a really close ally of mine was going to go home. But it's even then, it was still oh no, it's painful to not be on the receiving end of information right away. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, we finally do get to the vote, and we get it's a 6-3 vote for Ashley. Ashley is taken out of the game, not before imparting some very important words on us. Ashley, again, this is something that we at DCP take a lot of pride in, the fact that DCP was Ashley's first org that she ever played, and that she really felt this was a platform she wanted to get back onto to play as her authentic self, means so much to us on production. It really is the type of community we want to build. We want to build a community where people feel they can be their authentic selves with us in DCP. And Ashley, of course, tells us that they are playing for P Flag, that she's playing for P Flag and with the Roaring Fork Valley. So, and again, as Ashley said, if anyone feels so inclined to donate to P Flag, The URL is www.pflagrfv.org. I don't know if Ashley's hit that $200 donation match limit yet, but if she hasn't, please send your donation receipts to her so that and she'll match that up to that $200. We know this is a huge cause for Ashley, and we are more than happy to support that with her.
Yeah, I love Erik Island. I'm always the first to say it. And Ashley being the only returnee from Erik, I had like a soft spot for her coming into the season. But as it is, people have to go home.
Yeah. Just Ashley, from a game perspective, she overplayed her hand this round. And I really think the target was not really originally on her. And then just maybe as she kept targeting like the three, I'm not saying she shouldn't have been saying like the three of Maddie, Simmons, and Austin Moorhead, but like maybe this round she should have laid low. But at the same time, what a beautiful moment to see. And I wish Ashley nothing but the best. And I mean, I'm definitely donating, and
Ashley is such a phenomenal player. We saw it all the way through her game. The way she is able to lead a room and not have it blow back on her is incredibly impressive. If you watch that first call at the merge, Ashley leads that entire conversation, and her name doesn't come up for 3 rounds. Like, that is impressive beyond belief. Ashley, phenomenal player. So happy to have you as part of this DCP family. McKenna, I'm glad you brought up your love for Erik Island, because my next note actually says, ask you about your love for Erik Island.
Yeah, I love that season. It's so fun. It's chaotic. It's so messy. I love Brett as a winner, but like I just love it. It's so fun, and it's, I like always talk about it because it's like truly encompasses the craziness of a mini, like on the outside. And that makes sense. Like
yeah, that's what makes sense.
Like, it's just so fun, and the cast is fun, and it just feels like everything that could happen happens. Lots of rock draws, lots of like just wildness. And I had so much fun watching the seasons, and I watched them after my season, watched them consecutively, like within 3 weeks. I watched every season of DCP. And that's the one that really sticks out in my head just because it's so fun. So yeah, it was really fun to watch Ashley come back, and I knew she would do well. And I knew she would be at the merge. I was like, she could be my winner pick. Like, I'm not sure. But it was really fun to watch her play in a little more, it's still pretty wild and crazy, but a little more controlled setting.
So let's get into the second episode, because we've talked a lot about this first episode, and we have another massive player go home in the second episode in Kylie, who both of you played with, both of you had a relationship with. So we'll get into that for sure. But we kick it off, and we have Austin talking about the fact that he's been, like, Austin Moorhead's talking about, he's been pushing the names really hard the last couple of rounds, and he needs to kind of step back. Now, quite frankly, I'm going to say this: Austin does not step back this round. He says he should, and then he's just like, you know what? No, I'm going to keep going. Balls to the wall. Like, let's just full speed ahead. I am still leading this train. What, when you're saying a name, like, how dangerous is it to say a name, Margaret?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, please fact check me. I won't be offended, but I do think I think he let Zucker or someone else throw Kylie's name out first. Like, at least this round, Austin Moorhead did not throw out Kylie's name, but it benefited him when it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like, yeah, you're right. He wasn't the first person to throw out the name, but he was definitely the person pushing it the hardest this round, I would say.
I would say that they're in these mini rounds, maybe like merge round and then the round after that, it really does benefit you to throw out a name. But it's honestly, but past that, it's better to lay low if that had been your strat. I don't think anyone who like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, don't be the one who throws out the name at the beginning. Like, kind of, let the tide fall where it does. The metaphor got confused, but I hope y'all know.
It's okay. It's like an Austin metaphor.
Oh God, it was not as bad as the pizza metaphor.
It's not. Austin, we love you, but I don't know what you were trying to say in that moment still.
I as an ADHD individual, I got where he was going, but man, was it painful.
So I think this is part of the episode where I would normally break down the challenge, but I think we have someone a little, better suited to do that. McKenna, what do you think?
Me?
You. This is your challenge.
Oh yeah, they were like, hey, you know who reads books? McKenna Inglis.
Yeah. No. Well, so Lilly wrote this folklore and couldn't be there the day of for some reason. And we kind of went back and forth, like, should we have Lilly record it and then just play the recording in Lily's voice, or do you want me to read? And this was a conversation back and forth for like a day, maybe a day and a half. And then the morning of, they're like, hope you're ready to read. You're going to read DCP folklore. And I was nervous as hell, I'll tell you. But it was so fun, well written. Just like a little ditty about DCP, with some facts and figures about hosts and past hosts, current hosts, past seasons. I don't know. It was just fun. It was really, when Lilly brought this idea or like read it at a prod meeting, we were like, oh, this is so, I like was so moved by the story. It was just fun to be able to incorporate something like this into an all-star season.
Yeah, it felt like the appropriate moment to bring back this kind of classic Survivor challenge, right? And we can't do it the way they do folklore in Survivor, because we can't have people running around and like choosing multiple choice stuff and bringing it back to see if it's correct or not. We have some limitations that like the internet limits us a little bit, but it gave us this opportunity to do this challenge that we haven't done before. Lilly provided us with an absolutely incredible story, like so well written, so fascinating. McKenna reads it wonderfully. You're on the edge of your seat just listening to it. And let's back up a couple of rounds here. This is the round of 8. And Shea's reset a challenge advantage did not work on this challenge. And that's because we figured it wouldn't work on this challenge. We couldn't just reread the story and let people answer questions again. Doesn't work. We didn't have a backup story, so we were just like, the easiest thing to do is make it so this advantage doesn't work this round. Margaret, how would you have done in this type of challenge?
I'll just say that if I were in I'm saying this with all the love to Lilly, because there is a lot to love, as we know. But if I were a contestant, I remember when Lilly was leading my exit interview, how I was so soothed when she's asking questions. And then when it's done, I realize she asked me the juiciest thing possible. And I have to be like, ah! So I know that if I were a contestant hearing Lilly read, I probably would have fallen asleep. And then they'd be like, oh yeah. Like, honestly, I think there would have been more Zucker type like answers if Lilly had read. Whereas McKenna, I'm not saying you did this on purpose, but like you're like kind of like there's a little bit more emphasis, like throughout as it naturally fits. And so as a viewer, I was like, wait, hold on, listen to what McKenna is saying, because there's going to be questions, just and like even though that would have been true if Lilly had read it, I was not lulled into a false sense of security the same way. I hope that made sense. Most of what I say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we see it, and like you said, Zucker not good at this challenge. Self-admittedly, not good at this. It was so bad. We actually wondered if he was throwing it, and so much so that even up to the point where we were editing this episode, we're like, "Did Zucker throw it?" And then we had this clip of him saying he wishes he threw it. He was just that bad at it. This is a tough one, and it comes down to the last question. The last question, and you can see they have to name 2 of the 4 adjectives used to describe the host at the beginning of the story, and we see a bit of controversy here because Simmons writes out intelligent instead of intellect. And I don't know if you noticed this during it, but he holds it up. Ian reads it. He's like, intellect, good. And Simmons says, oh, it's intelligence. And then like kind of catches himself. He's like, oh, they didn't catch that. I'm going to put my paper down now. But Simmons, I'm sorry. I'll come up. I was the one who had you pinned. I was the one who saw that it said intelligent instead of intellect. It's my fault. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If you need to blame anyone, blame me. But because of that, we have a 4-way tie at the end of the 10 questions, and they have to go to a tiebreaker, which we kind of hummed and hawed about how to do a tiebreaker for this for a little while. We realized we kind of had to take the Big Brother approach with it, where you make them guess a number and like just be like the closest person to the number. That just has to be what it is. We use Price is Right rules. Unless they all went over, then it was whoever was the closest. And it ended up clocking in at just over 3 minutes, just under 3 minutes, right? 172 seconds, I think was what it was. So with that, Garsow wins immunity, which you might not think was such a big deal. But as we saw from a lot of confessionals, Garsow needed to win this immunity.
Oh yeah, this is where I absolutely is like, look, I have a really bad feeling Garsow is not the winner of this season, but also as someone who won when they needed to, and then when watching the episode back, saw everyone being like, well, if Margaret hadn't won, we'd be voting her out. Like, I was like, oh, Garsow knew. Good for him. Mm-hmm. Good for him. He won when he needed to.
Yeah, and we see Garsow also is taking up this mantle that Ashley had in the last episode, where he's talking about this like Fubo 2.03 of Simmons, Maddie, and Austin Moorhead, and how we have to start targeting them. But again, none of those 3 are the people being talked about being voted for. McKenna, explain this to me. How is this happening? We have people legitimately, it seemed for so long that these people were going under the radar, and it seems that they're on the radar now, but people still aren't voting for them. Why?
I don't know. It's so funny. It's so funny, and I don't know if it's watching a lot of it unfold behind the scenes, but you just want to bang your head against the wall because you're like, these people are so well insulated, and maybe they're just playing their perception off really well. I don't know, but it's funny because I kind of was feeling this way about Kylie too. Like, why aren't people not targeting Kylie right after the merge? Because it was Kylie versus Lex, and then Kylie just kind of got swept up in other people, and other people became targets ahead of her. And I wonder in this scenario if people are just kind of circling back to that. they're kind of eliminating everybody you eliminate everyone that was associated with Lex in a sense, except for Garsow, and now you're going on Lex's warpath for him. Like, it's just so funny to watch. And it's funny to me, like, people always bring up Karen as a winner and like, oh, she's a winner and she's a challenge beast, and then like people never bring up that like that Simmons got so close to the end or Austin got so close to the end. Like, that just never crosses people's minds, even people that were in their season. Like, it's either winner or everybody else. So that's just a fun,
we saw
group.
Saw that throughout this entire season too, right? Because we had so many finalists or near finalists on this cast. People like Sarah, never mentioned as a someone who made it to Final Tribal Council. Jeremy, never mentioned as someone who made it to Final Tribal Council. Like, we had so many people who were near winners, and like no one ever talked about that. So we start off this scramble, and we see Zucker throws out Kylie's name. And we have this 3-person limit to a room, so we kind of see a lot of like mismatches of different people in different rooms, seeing how things are going. And we have Zucker throwing that out, and then there are other things. It's hard to show in the episode when things are happening tangentially and at the same time. But in another room, we have Austin and Andrew sitting together trying to figure it out, and Austin's actually at a point where he's saying maybe Zucker should go. Like, maybe this is the time where we can let go of Zucker. And Maddie comes into that room with them. And I know this because of the behind the scenes of it all. Maddie gets in there, and they don't have enough time to talk to Maddie before Karen jumps in the room too and says, one of you needs to leave so I can talk to 2 of you, and then gets pulled for a confessional. Again, it's not my fault. I just say a name and they come. So then Maddie asks Andrew and Austin what's going on. It's like, oh, were you talking about like, because they were talking about a split vote. They were like, Zucker, and we should probably split it on someone else. And I was like, oh, are you talking about splitting on Kylie? And Austin and Andrew are just like, yeah, that works. Let's do that. And it's a small moment that like didn't make the episode, but it's a moment that really kind of shows how in a mini just saying someone's name can be enough to swing the momentum, because it looked like Zucker was actually picking up a lot of momentum. Kylie, to be fair, Kylie, it's impossible to not say Kylie is one of the best players we've ever had in DCP. Her ability to fight in any moment, we saw it at the merge. We saw what Kylie did with the Lex boot. Like, it is absolutely astounding how well she is able to take people and work with them and swing things to the way she wants things to go. You two both know that firsthand, and I'm looking forward to hearing about that after I'm finished speaking here. But sometimes all it takes is someone saying a name, and it switches the momentum. And we see Simmons and Maddie coming together later on their own, like deciding, is it Kylie? Is it Zucker? What's going on? And Simmons is like, Kylie. And Maddie says, she's been on my list all day. So we do have people who had been thinking about Kylie as a threat. It was just waiting till they had their moment. And now that moment's come. So please, enough of me talking about Kylie. I want you two to talk about Kylie, because you know her so much better than I do.
All right. Hold on. Let me turn to camera and say, Kylie, I haven't said it lately, but you know that I love you. You are one of my favorite people. But Kylie is also not one of my favorite people to play a Survivor org with. Because seeing what she did at the merge, I was like, oh my God, this is just like your gameplay. Like, you're loyal to somebody pre-merge, and then the moment you realize you might need to cut them, you do. And like, hey, don't get me wrong, people have won doing that. And I know she has won other orgs probably doing that, but like, when I realized that is what she had done, like, you know, seeing that she had done that, I was like, I don't think that's going to work out. And because people, even if they're not your like, you know, it's one thing if people are your ally and they're start thinking, oh, maybe they'll do that to me. But if they're not, but it's also like, if they're not your ally, they'll be like, okay, you're saying, like Austin said it best, like, oh, you're saying you're voting with me now, but I don't trust that you'll always keep voting with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love Kylie and I love watching Kylie play. And I don't know if I've ever said it on camera, but it's so surreal playing with her and then watching the season back versus watching her play a season that I'm not in, because knowing what I know now with her connection to Mike and Monte Carlo, and then like that was possibly going to come into play again here. Like Kylie self-admittedly threw a lot of her game away in Monte Carlo for Mike. And that was my anticipation of like what is going to happen in All-Stars. And is she going to do that again with Mike? Is she going to do that again with Corey? And it was so exciting to watch her cut Corey, even though it was admittedly hard for her. And I just, like, I've always had a lot of respect for Kylie and the how she plays and how she navigates situations. She can talk circles around anybody and scare them into doing whatever she wants, myself included. So I like just felt she was playing such a great game. And I think she just was on the wrong side of the numbers. She just had the wrong alliance. She had good alliances. She had good connections. And even you see, like, she wants to be loyal to Simmons and Simmons wants to work with Kylie, but it just ultimately isn't what's best for his game and his alliance's game. And we see they have the majority at this point. So, yeah, I just think Kylie, even though Kylie didn't make it as far, and even though, she didn't, I don't know, this game was just so much better of hers, I believe, between the two that I've seen in DCP. She's just fun to watch play, especially when she comes into her own and like hits a stride and she's playing for herself and she's not playing for Mike.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I just want to say controlled chaos, Kiley Kelley. Like, yes, all, like, as a viewer, all there for it. But it also makes me glad I did not come back for this round, because I would have probably been on the Lex end of things.
Yeah, I'll say there were times in Monte Carlo when I would tell Kylie I was going to do something, and then I was like, obviously not going to do that. And she'd be like, we need to talk right now. And I'm like, I'm at the movies. I can't talk. I'm doing whatever. I can't talk. Like, because I was so scared of her and the wrath that would come.
Let's talk about that for a moment, because Kylie does that in this episode. And in a mini, you don't have the excuse of being at the movies to avoid her. Kylie just goes to Zucker, is like, you throw my name out?
Yeah.
Sorry, just she had the nerve to do what I wish I really said to Will when in the round Parker went. So good for her.
Yeah, it's honestly, I commend the move, because like it's one of those things where it catches people off guard. No one expects you to do it, right? No one expects you to confront them and be like, so you're throwing my name out? We see Kylie's frustration in one of her confessionals, where she's talking about how she should have voted Zucker out last round because he's the one throwing out her name here. Is she in a better place if Zucker goes instead of Ashley? Probably. Does it prevent her from going here? I don't know. It's hard to tell, because Kylie was driving that last vote and pushing it a little bit there. And we see at this point, we see Austin saying it again, right? Like, I am worried Kylie is going to become what she said Lex was going to be. Which is very poetic. I thank you, Austin, for giving us this poetic closure to this first section of the merge here with this vote out of Kylie. But it's just so impressive. I mean, Simmons did the same thing with Zucker. He also called out Zucker for doing it. I want to see more of that. I always want to see more of that. Future DCP contestants, call out people calling out your names. Maybe don't, because it might be very bad advice, but it's great for viewers. We love it when we watch it. I don't know if it's actually good for your game, but it does make good TV, and sometimes that's enough.
They were 50-50 here.
Yeah, well, it's good when you if you know for a fact that you are probably the one going home, go off.
Yeah, exactly. You have nothing to lose at that point, right? And Kylie fights here. If Kylie wasn't going up against 4 people who had played a game already together, and my sister, the sister of another person who played a game with them, I guess, she probably has a good chance of fighting her way out of this. But she's just on the wrong side of the numbers. And like, it's at a point where, again, this Exile 4 gain a majority after this vote. So it's so important for them not to vote out Zucker here.
Yeah. This round is exactly why, like, I think maybe I wouldn't have targeted every Exile, like, alum, in the pre-merge stage, but I would have targeted one of them if, whoever it suited, because now they're all here together. And even though they haven't all been working together this entire game, it's like, sorry, that's like, you can't get past history sometimes. Even though, like, in actual Survivor, you have someone who voted their own mom out, but, like, also screw that lady. I don't even remember her name right now, but,
They
Well, it's
did
okay.
technically vote Austin Moorhead out.
They did.
Like,
They did do that at the very beginning of the game. He was
but
voted
Austin
out.
Moorhead is still with them. So, like,
It's true. It's very true. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I honestly don't know what to say. And I mean, like, I'm maybe even the worst person to say, because I clearly know how close these 4 are, because I also played that game with them. But do your homework, I guess, is all I can really say. Do your homework. Like, figure it out. When I played Exile and we had our first swap and Simmons was on my tribe for the first time, I hopped on a call with him. And the first question I asked him was how he knew Austin, because they were already Facebook friends. Like, that's the type of detail you have to be paying attention to in these games. Otherwise, 4 people come together who have known each other for 2 years, and they can just be like, fall into this point where they're at a majority. So last, we say goodbye to Kylie, although someone, Maddie, spelled Kylie's name wrong. And the funniest thing, it's not shown here, she realized that as soon as she put her vote up to vote, she was like, I spelled this wrong. We didn't put it in the episode, though. So, Maddie, tisk, why did you gotta do that, spelling Kylie's name wrong like that? But Kylie runs with it and says we should vote off Kylie Scruggs instead. Interesting twist. And not the first time we've talked about production, like replacing someone with the same name as them in a cast before. So, Kylie, I don't know how you knew that's been a running joke for 7 seasons prior to this, but you nailed a DCP in joke.
I mean, I remember being on jury when McKenna Inglis was being voted out of Monte Carlo, and it would have been really convenient if instead McKenna Feeney hopped on the call and was like, actually, it's me being voted out. McKenna Inglis is still in the game, because had McKenna Inglis made it to the end, yeah, she would have been my winner pick. But I'm incredibly biased in that regard. So
now, okay, it's the Sunday show. We like having some fun. So let's stop talking about how embarrassing it is for me when I play with a McKenna. Let's start making memes. We're bringing it back. The cast has asked us. The cast directly has asked us. We want more memes. So I have 3 more pictures from these last couple of episodes. Margaret, McKenna, I want you to give us a caption for them. We're going to throw them up on social media afterwards. We're going to see what everyone thinks about them.
Yikes.
Our first image is Stoneface Zucker.
So, McKenna, if you need time to think, I have mine written down. So
Perfect. Well, I'm just not feeling very funny, but I can think of something for this one. But go ahead, Margaret.
Considering the episode, this is perfect. When you hear the rules of the immunity challenge and know you have nothing of value to add.
That's beautiful. McKenna, it's gonna be a tough one to beat.
I know. I can't word it well. That's my issue is I have an idea. I'm just struggling with my wording, but like me watching the Ticketmaster queue grow, like all I can think about is getting concert tickets right now. And that was my face watching every queue of every Ticketmaster fiasco I tried getting concert tickets to this year.
I think you've definitely summed up the Ticketmaster experience for everyone.
Yeah, in Zucker too with that face.
Yeah. All right, here's our next one. Austin Garsow, not too impressed.
I'm sorry, Garso. I don't mean to laugh. This picture's so funny to me. Oh, caption.
Okay, McKenna, I'm going to make you go first because you clearly are loving this picture.
He doesn't even need a caption. It's so funny.
I have one ready to go. Just let me know.
Go for it, Margaret.
This is actually not Survivor related. It's when someone's cute puppy walks by in the background of your serious Zoom convo.
That's huge. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, McKenna, what do you got?
Oh gosh. I can't even think of anything. Oh, I'm usually witty, but I can't think of anything.
Intellect, charisma. What was the other story?
This has got to be like when someone takes the last sandwich, like when someone takes the last piece of pizza. Like it's just so sad.
Okay. You were getting to a point where I was going to suggest that your submission was just like ellipses. Okay, we have one more. I don't know if this is tired Andrew or if this is shocked Andrew. I hope you two can send me in the right direction. What caption do we have for this picture of Andrew?
My caption is that feeling when you orchestrated a blind side and it's actually working.
Nice.
I didn't think about him being tired, but I'm thinking about like when two people you lied to are in the same room talking together.
That is true, and that is a fear, especially when there are those 3-player limits on rooms in the scramble time. Okay, so we got some memes. Make sure you go to Instagram to vote for which memes you like the best. Yeah, that's it. We're at the end of the Sunday show, and you know what that means. It's time for our MVPs. Woo. Margaret, who are you giving your MVP to for these 2 episodes?
I'm giving my MVP to Garsow because he knows in the minority, but he's still fighting. Go Garsow.
McKenna, who have you got?
I am giving mine to Austin Moorhead. I think this point in the game, you really start to see Austin kind of get a grip on where he's at, and you start seeing him take control of his own game, and he's not just like Simmons lackey right now. He's throwing out the names and he's making the moves, and he's I think coming into himself as a player. Not that he hasn't been a great player, but I hope this is something that we see moving forward from him. But yeah, it started in last week's episodes, but we really see it grow. And he has enough self-awareness to step back even and say, I don't know if I need to, like you said, I need to kind of pump the brakes. And then he kind of goes half and half. But I really enjoyed watching Austin this week.
I mean, there are 9 amazing players at this point. I have to echo what you're saying, though, McKenna. I agree. Austin Moorhead is showing himself. And if we look at how far he's come since his original season, since Yasawa, right? Like, and in Yasawa and Exile, he kind of felt more like a passenger a lot of the time. This is Austin in control. And he's part of this tight 3 alliance that are still talking together, still communicating with each other. But he is playing such an important role in that alliance of being the vocal person. He's kind of in this, it's almost like being voted out first allowed him to unlock this mode where, like, you know, he's defeated and now he's powered. Like, we all know Austin loves Dragon Ball, right? Like, he's been defeated and he has to Super Saiyan up in an Austin metaphor of sorts. And he's rising to the occasion here. He's being forceful, but not in an overbearing way where it's coming back on him. He's pushing votes. He's not afraid to say people's names. And he's also relying on his other allies to provide the thought process to it, which is something that I don't think gets acknowledged enough in some players, where he still knows when to take a back seat, but he knows when it's his opportunity to step up. And that's what we're seeing from him this week. Well, with that, that's the end of the Sunday show. Thank you again, Margaret and McKenna, for joining me. Again, if anyone feels so inclined to donate to PFLAG, please do so. Email that receipt to Ashley, and she will match the first donations up to $200. And that's it. Tune in Monday and Thursday for the next pairing of episodes. Not to get into spoiler territory, but things are getting really exciting. I've been saying it for weeks. Things are getting more exciting because we have an all-star cast just delivering all the time. We have exit interviews coming out usually on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Sometimes sometimes it's hard to schedule these things. And of course, you still have me next week. I'm here next Sunday too. Once again, bring you the recap of the week. So make sure you like and subscribe. We really appreciate that. It gets our channel out there, gets more people seeing what we're doing. Follow us on Instagram, join the Facebook group, and we'll see you next week.